Okay, today I want to talk about Apache Webserver and talk about setting up user web space in Apache. I've got a clean install here of CentOS 6.5 Linux, and we're going to look at installing Apache in Linux as opposed to Windows, even though you can do that. One of the things that I need to show you here is I've gone ahead and I've logged in as root here on this system. CentOS Linux is one of the few Linux distros that will let you do that. And a lot of things that we're going to need to do here in Apache, we're going to need to be using elevated privileges as root to perform those. And so rather than use the su command multiple times, we're just going to log in as root, and that way we'll have elevated privileges the whole time we're here. Okay, the first thing I want to do is I want to do two things. I want to add another user space here. So I'm going to bump that up to 3, and so I've got 3 workspaces here. And then additionally, I want to go ahead and bring the terminal out on the desktop so that I have an icon for that out there. I don't have to go looking for it all the time. All right, and so now we're ready to go. And so let me go ahead and launch the terminal by double-clicking here. I like to bump it up to full screen so we can see what we're doing, and that's why we need the multiple workspaces here. So let's go out and look and see if Apache is installed on this distribution of Linux. Sometimes it comes installed, sometimes it doesn't. A lot of distros will go ahead and put Apache on there as an enticement for users to use their distribution of Linux, and CentOS is one of those where sometimes it's installed and sometimes it's not. So let's go ahead and take a look and see if it's there. And the way to do that is I'm going to issue an RPM QA switch here, which is RPM is a Red Hat Package Manager. QA is to query all, and I'm going ahead and pipe that to a grep HTTPD, which is a daemon, a hypertext transfer protocol daemon, which is what Apache Webserver is. Daemon in Linux is a process that runs in memory, and that's what a web server does. An application that has a process that runs in memory and sits there and waits for commands to be issued to it to serve up web pages. So let's go ahead and hit the enter key, and if we get something back, it means that Apache is installed. If we don't get anything, it means that it's not installed, and so we'll need to install it. So I'm going to go ahead and issue a command to install Apache. Sometimes Apache is called Apache in Linux, sometimes it's called HTTPD, and so we'll try Apache first. What I'm going to use as a command here to launch it, to go searching for it rather than to install it, is called a yellow dog update manager yum. Some distros use apt or aptitude like Ubuntu and Debian, but CentOS, being a Red Hat Enterprise Linux version or distribution, a derivative, since CentOS is a community enterprise operating system, it's based on RHEL, it uses yum. So I'm going to do a yum install Apache, and let's see if it can find it. It's going to go out and look for it. It does not find it. Now, using yum is an advantage over RPM. I could use RPM to install it because it is an installer, but yum, unlike RPM, will actually go out to the repository for CentOS, and it will find the files that you need, the binaries in this case for Apache. In addition to that, it will look for any dependencies that are needed for Apache, and if it does have dependencies, it will go ahead and grab those as well. RPM will not do that. So if you use RPM, you wind up having to go out and locate all the dependencies, and then when you find one, install that dependency. It has another dependency that it might need, so you sit around all day long installing dependencies. Yum is the better choice. So let's go ahead and do that yum command and install HTTPD now this time, and let's see if it can find it. Looks like it did, and so it's going to go ahead and install Apache here. It looks like there's going to be about 1.1 megabytes in files that need to be installed. It's installing these things here. It looks like it's going to install a package i686 version 2.2.15 for Apache. And so I'm going to go ahead and say yes here. And it's going to ask me for a key, and I'm going to say yes to that as well. And now it's going to go ahead and validate the download and install Apache for me and get that up and running. Now when Apache installs, it will not be running as a web server initially. We'll have to start it, and I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so it's completed. Alright, so now that we have it installed, and we can verify that by running that RPM minus QA again and piping that out to grep for HTTPD, and it tells us that we are running Apache, which is HTTPD 2.2 or 2.2.15-31 for CentOS i686, and it also lets us know we have the latest tools for Apache as well. Okay, now that we've got it installed, what we need to do here is look at the status of Apache. There are a couple of different commands you can use for that, and one of them is an etc. Etc is the folder that Linux uses for configuration. There is an init.d folder, which is the initialization daemon folder, where all the daemons are initialized on startup, and and then there is an httpd status command here we can give this. So let's look at that. It tells us that the HTTP daemon is stopped. There is another command we can use in place of the etc initd httpd, and that is service httpd status. We run that, and it tells us the same thing, that httpd is stopped. And so what we're going to have to do is start it, and to do that we use the same command. And it now tells us that httpd is starting, and so let's check the status on it to see if it has started. And it does tell us that HTTPD is started, and it also gives us a process ID or PID number, which is 2164, and that number is critical if you want to kill the process in case of a crash, or if Apache freezes up on you or something like that. You can go in and issue a kill command against that PID number and actually stop the process and stop Apache. Alright, now that we've got it up and running, that's good for now. If I were to go ahead and reboot the system, Apache would not be running on startup. There's another command we need to use in order to make sure that when Apache, when Linux reboots or restarts, or we have to do that, that Apache will be running up on startup. So the command for that is a check config command, and we're going to say check config HTTPD on, and that's going to ensure that Apache is running on startup. Alright, so let's go ahead, and at this point we want to proceed with, now that we've got Apache installed and up and running, we want to go ahead and create those user web spaces. And one way we can do that is we can use what's called the skeleton folder in the etc folder of Linux in order to ensure that there's a public underscore HTML and an index.html file within that. One other thing I want to mention, though, is let's change directory to to var www HTML, and let's take a look at, let's run a list long file format, and we'll see it's empty right now. Let's go ahead and put a file in there, an index.html file, so that Apache will have a default web page other than the one that's there when Apache is installed. Var www HTML is where the default web pages are stored in Apache in Linux. So let's go ahead and use touch command, and let's create the index.html file while we're in the HTML folder. And then let's go ahead, and I'm going to use a get, gedit rather, command to edit that file. And so it opens it up for me. I'm going to do some beautiful code here for HTML to get a default web page set up. Okay, and let's close the HTML tag, and let's go ahead and save the file. Okay, so now if I go out here and fire up Mozilla Firefox, and since we are on the server here, I can use localhost as the web server's address as opposed to the IP address itself. So I'm going to do an http://localhost, and I don't need to put in the index.html because it's there by default, and there's the web page we just created. This is the default web page in Apache, so we know that's the Apache web server is up and running. I didn't put default, I put default, but that's okay. We see it, and I can go back and change that if I wanted to. But anyway, it's up and running, and so we know that we have a functional Apache web server, and it is serving up web pages. Okay, so let's go back out to the terminal here. The next thing I want to do is get into that scale folder, and I want to create a public_HTML folder and put index.html in there. What the scale folder does is that once you create anything under the scale folder, any users that you add to the Linux system, this information gets automatically appended to their user account. So let's go ahead and change directory to etc scale, and as you can see, let's run a list command here. You can see that there's nothing in it right now, and so let's go ahead and now that we're in the scale folder, let's do a make directory public_HTML. Alright, so that let's do another list command, and we can see that we have a public_HTML folder now. And so let's change directory to public_HTML, and let's go ahead and create an additional index.html file and edit that file, which is going to be the default file for all users under the user web space. Alright, so let's open that up. And let me do some more beautiful code here. And let's see, this is the default web page for users in Apache. Okay, and let's close the tag and close the HTML tag. Alright, and let's go out and save that index.html as well. Alright, so now that we've created the folder and the index.html file, let's go about now adding the users to the system that we want to have access to user web space and have their own website, so that we can go out on the network, not on this platform, but on another machine, which I have out on the network, and we can actually come back and pull up the web pages for each individual user. So to add users in Linux, we're going to use the user add command. So I'm going to add 3 users. I'm going to add a user by the name of Lincoln, and I'm going to give Lincoln a password, and I'm going to give that password as capital PA55W0RD, and I'm going to repeat that. Alright, so we have that one created, and now I'm going to create another user. I'm going to call that user, let's see, Douglas, D-O-U-G-L-A-S, and give Douglas a password. Alright, I'm going to give him the same password, capital PA55W0RD, and capital PA55W0RD. Alright, we've got that one created, and now lastly we want to create that final account user add bell. and PASSWD for password for Bell. And let's give him the same password, capital PA55W0RD. Capital PA55W0RD. All right, so we have 3 accounts and 3 passwords associated with those accounts. If we want to change the directory to home, and we can look at those users, and so let's run a list. Let's actually do a ALH here. Go back it up here, do an ALH switch, and we can take a look and see that we have the Bell, the Douglas, and the Lincoln folders created. We can run another list command, which will look at directory structure information. And let's see, that's for, we're in the home. Let's see here, if I want to run an ls recursive command. Let's do an ls recursive Lincoln, Douglas, and Bell, so we can look at all 3 at the same time. And you can see here that we have a Bell account created, a public HTML folder created under that, and an index.html created within that folder. Same for Douglas here, and the same for Lincoln. So we've accomplished that now, and the SCEL folder allowed us to do that without having to do a lot of work. Okay, so now that we have that accomplished, the next thing I want to do is I want to run an ls. Okay, the next thing we need to do is we need to get into the configuration file for Apache in Linux. And the location of that configuration file is, let me change the directory to etc httpd conf. So that's the etc httpd configuration folder. And so if we take a look at a listing of that particular directory, we'll see that there's a file in there called httpd.conf. That's the Hypertext Transfer Protocol daemon configuration file. Before we do anything with it, though, let's copy that file and save a backup of that file in case we do anything to really screw it up and then we can't recover. So let's do a cp httpd.conf, and let's save that out to httpd.conf.org for original. All right, and so now let's take a look at this file by editing the file and getting into it, and I'll show you what we need to do to set up that web user space. So let's do a gedit of the file, httpd.conf. And what we're going to be looking for here, this particular file is a pretty extensive file. It's several hundred lines of code here. You've got a lot of hash marks in the beginning here which indicate comments. Anything that has a pound sign or a hash mark in front of it is not read by Apache when it loads. And so anything that is not commented, obviously, is going to be read. So got a lot of commented out lines here on the code. The file itself is made up of 3 sections. There's a global environment section, there's a main server section, and then there is a virtual host section. All right, so we're going to be looking for a particular area of this file that is called mod_userdir.c. So let's go ahead and search and find that particular area. So that's mod_userdir, userdir.c. And let's do a find on that and locate it. And it did find it. It's right here, and it's in the if module. All right, and so what we need to look at here is we're going to set up user directories associated with the web user space. And right now, this particular command is read by Apache because it's not commented, and it says the user directory is disabled. So, well, we need to turn that off. In order to do that, we need to get a pound sign in front of it in order to comment that out so that it is enabled. Okay. The other thing I need to do is come down here where it says user_dir public_html. I need to remove that pound symbol so that it uncomments it so that Apache will read that file. Now, in addition to that, we also need to come down to one other area of this particular file, which is in the area of the home star public HTML area. So let's come back to here and let's scroll down in this file, and it should be somewhere. I may have passed it. Let's see here. Let me come back up. And no, I didn't pass it. So now here it is. Yeah, I did pass it. It's the directory space home star public HTML. This is to control access to user dir directories. We'll need to comment out, or remove the comments rather, on all of these lines of code here. So let me do them one at a time. Alright, removing those. And let's see here. And just make sure we get them all. Okay, so we got them all now commented. They're not commented anymore. So that's going to allow us to set up individual users' directories, web spaces here in Apache. This is home, and the star represents the individual user accounts that we set up. And then the public _HTML folder is what's going to establish that web user space that we're looking for. So we have everything set up now pretty much, I believe, in this particular configuration file. So we need to save that file. So let's save the file and then close the file. Now, the thing you need to realize is in Apache, when you modify the configuration file for HTTPD, you need to restart the server, because the only way that Apache reads that file again is if it's restarted. Right now, let's check the service HTTPD status, and you can probably see that it is running. So we'll need to do a service command, and to restart it, we'll do a service restart. That restarts the server, and it gave us an OK on each of those, stopping and starting. So now it has reread the file. And so at this point, we should be able to go out and touch those areas in order to get the websites for those particular individual users. Let's go back, though. Let's change directory to home, and let's go to Lincoln first. And let's go to the public _HTML folder, and let's do an edit of the index.html file within that folder. And you can see we have the default one set up by scale. So this is the default web page, not for users here, but for Lincoln in Apache. Okay, and so let's save that file. And now let's go out and let's change the directory to home and Douglas public _HTML, and let's edit the index.html under that particular folder. And this is the default web page for Douglas in Apache. Okay, and let's save that file. And now let's go back out again, and let's go to the final directory, change directory to home, Douglas public _HTML, not Douglas, but sorry, Bell. So let's go back out to Bell. All right. Okay, and let's edit that file, index.html. And then this is the default web page for Bell in Apache. Okay, let's save that file now and close it. There's a couple of other things that we need to do before we test this to make sure that we can access these user web spaces in Apache, and that is a couple of issues. We need to look at the firewall in Linux and CentOS. And we also need to look at permissions on the folder itself, the public _HTML, and we also need to look at something else that CentOS Linux has, and that's called SE Linux, which is Security Enhanced Linux. All of those things can get in the way here and prevent us from accessing the website. So let's look first at SE Linux. SE Linux either enforces or is permissive. And so in order to find out what the current permission is on the SE Linux, whether it's running or not, we need to use a command called get enforce, and that will tell us that SE Linux is currently enforcing, as you can see there. And so let's turn that off, and the way to do that is to run a set enforce 0, and now if we rerun the get enforce to see what the status of SE Linux is, you can see that it is permissive. Now that will only work for this one session we're in. If I were to restart Linux, it will also turn that back on again and reinforce to the enforcing status that we have here. So to change that, I need to use the same command that I used to establish Apache running whenever the system comes up, and that's the check config, and that's the set enforce 0. No, that's not the command that I use. Let me go research that real quick. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to put in system. Let's see here. I'm going to say system config security level, and that's the wrong command. And it should be system. Let's see. Let me click down here. System. That wasn't right. System dash config dash security level. I think that's it. Okay. Nope, that is not the right command either. Let's see here. Okay, well I just can't remember what the command is to ensure that SE Linux is going to be turned off, so I'll just skip over that for right now. I thought it was system-config-security level, but for whatever reason it's not running that command in this system. Alright, so what I need to do next now is look at the firewall in Linux. And so let's run the firewall listing. And to do that, firewall in Linux is let me click here, IP tables. And let's run a list. We can see that we've got a pretty good firewall going here. So I'm going to go ahead and flush the rules in the tables. So IP tables F for flush those out, and then let's go back and look at it. Alright, so now we've cleaned up the firewall here, so you can get that ruled out. And then one of the last things we need to look at is the permissions on the public_HTML folder. And so we need to make sure that the permissions there are at least 755. And so let's take a look at the current permissions on that. So let's go back and change directory to home, and let's see, let's look at that particular folder, and let's look at the listing on those folders, and we can see that Bell, Douglas, and Lincoln all have looks like 701 as permissions right now. So we're going to do a change mod command. Well, that's on that folder right there. Let's just give me a second. Let's go and look at. Now we can do it on this folder, these folders, and then that will work for the public_HTML. So let's do a change mod 755, and that's a recursive for Bell, Douglas, and Lincoln. Alright, and so now if we do a listing again on those folders, we can see that we have read, write, and execute, read and execute, read and execute. So that's 7, 5, and 5 for all three of those folders. So now we should be in good shape and ready to go ahead and try to access the websites. So let's go back out to the network here to my Windows machine, and let's go ahead and fire up the Mozilla Firefox web browser. and then from here we can actually access the default web page in Apache, and then the user space folders as well. So let's go ahead, and one of the other things I forgot to do here, let's look at the IP address here on this server. We need to know what that is in order to access it. So to do that, we need to run an ifconfig, not ipconfig, but ifconfig command here in Linux. And you can see that the IP address is 192.168.142.162. So 142.162. So let's go back out to my Windows machine, and let's type in http://192.168.142.162, and that should get us to the default web page in Apache, and it does. Alright, so now the user folders are under the individual user accounts, public_HTML, and so in order to reach those, we need to type in the same http://192.168.142.162 and slash, and then a tilde, and a Lincoln for the very first one. So we'll be hitting Lincoln, Douglas, and Bell here. So if we do Lincoln, tilde Lincoln, we get the default web page for Lincoln in Apache, so that worked fine. And let's go back to here and type in 192.168.142.162 slash tilde Douglas. And that's Douglas's web space in Apache, and that pulls up Douglas's index.html file. And then the last one is http://192.168.142.162 slash tilde Bell, and that should take us to Bell's homepage, and it does. So we've shown here that we can access each of the users that we created in the system in Linux. We can access each of their user web spaces in Linux itself, in Apache. And now the last thing we want to do, let me go ahead and close these, is we want to look at the logs here in Apache. And the logs in Apache, let's go back to Linux here. And the logs in Apache are located in var log httpd, and then there's two of them. There's an access underscore log, and then there's an error underscore log. So there's an access log and an error log. So what I'm going to do is issue the cat command var log httpd access underscore log. Okay, and that pulls up the access log here, and you can see that the IP address, a machine with IP address of 192.168.142.144 accessed these web pages, and they were out on using Firefox web browser here. And then these are the status HTTPD status codes. This 404, I mean, there was an error here. 301, permissions error. And then 200 means everything worked out fine. This is a redirection, actually, permanent redirect. So anyway, so that's the access log here in Linux for the Apache web server. And then there's another log, cat var log httpd error underscore log. And if we look at that, we can see that there were some errors. There's some notices, and then there's some errors here where we were. This is for the favicon icon, and that's normal. And then here, the favicon icon as well. So these are the two logs in Apache that you can see for looking at accessing web pages and for any errors that might be generated. So this has been a demonstration on installing Apache Web Server in CentOS 6.5 and setting up web user spaces for user accounts in Linux and accessing those from an external machine using a web browser and accessing their websites in Apache using their web user spaces set up in user directory.